another episode of Animator Interviews. My name is Evan Vernon. I'm a contributor at Animation for Adults, as well as Animation Nights New York, also known as ANNY. For those new to ANNY, we are a monthly screening event and yearly festival that celebrates the very best in animation talent. Our artists come from all across the globe, and many have gone on to have their work featured at Cannes and other prominent festivals. Our next screening is scheduled for Sunday, May 23rd. Films will be available from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time with virtual mixers from 3 to 5 and 8 to 10. We've got a special guest today. Amanda Bonaiuto is with me now. Amanda holds an MFA in experimental animation and currently works as a freelance artist in New York. Amanda's music video, ANNIHILATION SONG, was commissioned by alt-pop band Rubble Bucket in 2018 and is an apt addition to their latest album, Sun Machine. Featuring mysterious travelers, singing birds, and vast psychedelic landscapes, ANNIHILATION Song suits Rubble Bucket's indie sound and brings their music to life in ways that only animation can. Amanda's talent needs no defense, however. Her work has been screened at several festivals, including Annecy, and includes many collaborations beyond ANNIHILATION Song. As more musicians notice Amanda, we can be sure to expect plenty of exciting music videos down the road. When she isn't animating, Amanda is also a teacher and currently instructs part-time at the New School in Manhattan. Today, she's kindly agreed to talk about her film, her career, and her advice for young, rising artists. Amanda, thanks for coming today. I'm going to start with the same question we ask all of our guests. What got you into animation?
Oh man, that might be a long answer. I think it was sort of a slow discovery for me. I started out in like a fine art school. So I was doing a lot of painting, but it was super interdisciplinary. Like it was a school that had no majors. You didn't have grades, like you didn't have to choose anything. So I was painting, I was making sculptures, I was making like video art. And I think the combination of those things kind of naturally led me to animation. And like once I discovered it and was taking some animation classes, I was like in, but I think my in was not really like television or cartoon based. It was like from a fine art lens. So I was approaching it from this weird way where I don't know, trying to use like materials to make my animation. So I think the first one I ever made was like a sand animation, which, you know, I'd probably watched like Caroline Leaf. I'd probably watched like one of her films and was just like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And because it felt like a moving painting, which like made total sense for me. So I built this like huge rig out of like metal piping and wood, and I had like clamped a camera to it, and I was just like pressing the button and taking a photo of like my sand animation, like blindly, like there was no capture software at that point. So it was a journey, but yeah, I mean, that was my entry point. And from there, I played around with a lot of different types of animation for a couple years, and then ended up going to grad school at CalArts. And that's where I got really into drawing. It hadn't really occurred to me to try like hand-drawn animation until I took a class called Drawn Techniques at CalArts, and that kind of like changed my life and my whole approach. So that's how.
Yeah, well, thank you for giving us an overview there. I'm sure that's just the cliff notes, Amanda, but that already tells us a lot. And it kind of leads into my next question too. You talked about your interest in fine art and experimenting with different media. And then you look at the content that you're producing now. I mean, take ANNIHILATION Song, right? The film that we're covering today as an example. It's very psychedelic, very kind of avant-garde. Do you feel like your fine art background kind of informed that style? Tell us a little bit about how you developed this very unique aesthetic.
Yeah, yeah, avant-garde and psychedelic. That's funny. Yeah, I think when I give like an artist talk, or when I like try to look back on older work that like predates like Annihilation Song or any of this hand-drawn work. I like, for example, I used to make a lot of soft sculptures, and I would make they were like characters, and they were all kind of like based off of like women in my family or like deceased like ancestors or like, but they all had like the same weird face, and also this sort of like shape. And when I look at my hand-drawn characters and sort of like the world that they're living in, I like fully see this through line where I'm like, oh, it's like sort of the same thing, just like in a different medium. But I think outside of that, like there was something like inherent going on there. But I think outside of that, like, I don't know, that drawing style just developed very slowly. And I think probably like just by looking at a lot of different animation, especially once I got to grad school, like a huge part of that program, it was the experimental animation program. A huge part of that was just like looking at so many films like every day. And I think like if we're being like perfectly honest, like you kind of like in my experience, like I watched a ton of things and I like picked what I loved from all of them and just like started like, it was just like congealing into one big ball that sort of turned into like what I'm making. And I think that's kind of cool. Like, yeah.
Yeah. You talk about different content kind of having a hand in inspiring your style. I hesitate to make comparisons between artists, but was Bill Plimpton ever in the picture?
Not Bill Plimpton, but I'm sure Bill Plimpton and I have some similar inspirations. A few years ago, like when I was developing the hand-drawn stuff, like for the first time, I was definitely really into Igor Kovalyov, Mikhaila Pavlitova, like definitely like kind of a lot of Eastern European stuff and a lot of like contemporary Japanese animation. But you know, I think Bill Plimpton definitely pulls from some of that stuff, but Bill Plimpton's films sometimes bother me.
Understood. Yeah. And at the end of the day, Amanda, what I'm hearing is that making a direct comparison isn't very fair. It's an amalgam of influences that you've kind of repurposed to create your own look and find your own voice.
Yeah, I feel like that's how it goes, or that's how it's gone for me.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing that, Amanda. I'd like to go ahead and talk about the film a bit. This is the first time, actually, that we've covered a music video for our interview series. So that alone makes this really unique. It also opens up a lot of other questions about your artistic process. So tell us first about Rubble Bucket, the band that made Annihilation Song. How did your partnership begin? How did you end up making this film?
Yeah, so I had just graduated from CalArts, and a producer who I had been working with that year on other projects, like a project for The Atlantic, knew Rubble Bucket and had basically with one of the band leaders like had a hang where she was like hanging out on the floor and like showing her a bunch of animation, and that person really liked my work. And so Rubble Bucket, one of the band leaders, Cal, just sent me an email kind of out of the blue, like a week after I had graduated, and was like, hey, we got this Apple grant to make a music video, and we'd really love to work with you. You can do whatever you want. No rules, like just get it to us by this date. Otherwise we lose the money and we're good. So it was just like that. Like it just happened sort of organically, which was I was so psyched. Like it was going to be my first commission after graduating. And I had like 3.5 weeks to make it, which is actually completely nuts, but happens definitely with music video deadlines. But it was tricky because like all my work, for the most part, all my work is like hand drawn on paper. So there are like 15 processes that I have to go through before I like have the final image. So it was tough, and I was working from like 7 a.m. to like 9 p.m. pretty much every day for that whole period. But I was like so fully enmeshed in this world of the video that it was just like very joyful. It was so fun to work on. Yeah, that's the origin story there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. First of all, that's super impressive. I'm not an animator myself, but the fact that you created such an intricate and fluid piece of art in the span of 3 weeks is nothing less than amazing. So thanks for sharing that detail,
Well,
Amanda.
I got an injury while I was like an animation injury while I was doing it too. So this is
Oh,
like a
really?
like one day I got up and sat down at my drafting table and I'm left-handed. My left hand was like tremoring and I noticed that my left leg was kind of numb. So I ended up having to go to like urgent care and they were like, go to the emergency room. And then I went to the emergency room and they were like, what have you been doing? And I was like, animating. And they were like, you've pinched like a major nerve and like, there's nothing we could do about it. You just have to rest.
Oh,
I
wow.
had to take a couple of days off, which was like really, at the time I was really annoyed by it, but then I was like, no, you got to listen to your body. And animation is like really, it's a labor intensive thing. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, warning, don't do what I did. Take care of yourself.
Yeah, you never really think of pinched nerves as a workplace hazard, but if you're sitting at a desk that long, it happens, I
Yep.
guess. Wow.
Yep. Totally.
Well, Amanda, thanks for giving us some context there. I think you've already, at least in part, answered my next question. You said that Rebel Bucket basically gave you free reign to do whatever you wanted with this video. And your portfolio, if I'm not mistaken, includes a lot of other music videos. Is this typical for you? Do these artists usually just approach you and say, do as you please? Or does the power dynamic kind of vary? Have you found yourself in a situation where you maybe have a little less control in the artist, the musician in this case, wants their vision to be realized in a very specific way?
I think I've been really lucky and also have been very like clear in communicating with collaborators. I think Rebel Bucket was a really good one for me to start with because they gave me permission to do that. And I think we were all really happy with what happened, like with the results of it.
Yeah.
So from there, the types of jobs that I would get, like from that video alone, were like, how did you do that? Can you use a similar approach for us? And I would say, yeah, like here was the approach. They gave me the song and told me to do whatever I wanted to do. And
Nice.
so there was like I think there's like always like a certain amount of like a trust curve that happens, but I have never made a music video that wasn't, under my full creative control. And I feel really, really lucky for that. And they've always, they've been really good collaborations. I do, though, sometimes do other jobs where it is a little bit more of either something that's like co-directed or like directed by me, but then we'll go through like rounds of notes. But I've never really had that. I've never had that with a music video. It's always been like, here's the thing. What do you think? um, and I've just been lucky.
Well, you've given us some really valuable information there. I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are just animation fans, but we also have listeners in the industry. So for people who are maybe considering following a career path similar to your own, it's good to know that there's this environment of mutual respect between artists. And like you said, just trust. Musicians know that you're the animator and you know how to best realize their vision on a visual level.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and understanding and like really practicing communication, like no, like the trust gets built from like really open communication. So like,
Yeah.
and that can mean like anything, like laying out your idea really clearly or saying like, this is what my process looks like. Like usually I come up with a lot of ideas during the animation process. Is that
Yeah.
okay with you? Like that kind of conversation.
Well, this is a lot of great info, Amanda. Thank you so much. I do have just a few more questions for you before we wrap up. The music videos, is this just incidental? All these projects keep coming up, or is there something that attracts you to this strand of animation? Do you think you consider this preferable to just original content?
Well, I work as a full-time freelance animator. Like that's my income. That's the bulk of my income. I also teach part-time,
Mhm.
but you know, doing these jobs is the bulk of it. And I think the more you do of something, the more that thing comes to you. So like the more music videos I make, the more music video job offers I get. And I think the first thing I'll say also is that like I do other projects that maybe are like less featured in my portfolio. Like I'll work on a short film and make animation for the short film, or I'm working on a TV show right now, but I can't talk about it because I signed an NDA. But I think with the music videos, they are preferable for me in the commission realm, because they are, in my experience, they have been really free. And it does feel the closest to making an independent short film. It's just like the soundtrack already exists. And that is like very freeing. I do like, I'm trying to make a film right now, like my own personal film, but it's tough. It's tough to, there's not a lot of funding, and it's tough, but it's happening slowly. But I do wish I could do more of that. I wish I could produce more of my own shorts that are like not commission pieces.
And I hope you find that freedom. It's sad to say, but some of the artists who we featured previously have aired similar concerns, frustrations that in the States, at least, it's difficult to create feature length content outside of the studio system because there's just a lack of public funding for art like this. So
Totally.
yeah, Amanda, once again, really appreciate your time today. I did have just one last question for you. You mentioned that you're an educator as well as a respected industry artist. For those listening in, for those who are maybe students wanting to enter the industry, what is the number one piece of advice that you would give to an aspiring independent such as yourself?
Oh gosh. Number one piece of advice is don't make the work that you think people want to see. Make the work that you want to make, because that's what's going to get you the work that you want to keep pursuing, right? Like stay with yourself, because I think it is really easy, especially with social media, to sort of like see what other people are doing and get a little swayed, and also to feel like this compare and despair where you're just like looking at all these incredible artists. But like your vision is unique, and like stick with yourself. And you like, I think that's like the single most important piece of advice I could give. Trust yourself too.
Yeah.
Like you rule. That's what I would say to my students.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. Amanda, once again, really appreciate your time today. For all those listening in, if you would like to see Annihilation Song, it's going to be part of Annie's screening again this coming Sunday. It'll be available from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, if you'd like to continue follow Amanda, we'll include all her pertinent professional and social media links in the interview description. Once again, Amanda, thanks again for giving us some of your wisdom. Thank you again for sharing your work. We hope we see you at Annie in the future, and all the best to you.
Thank you, Evan.